Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Ellen coming to you from the tropical island of St. Bart's, and you are listening to Light Talk.
This is Dennis, and I'm at the Santa Clara Hilton Hotel overlooking Levi Stadium, the home of next week's Super Bowl 60. You are listening to another historic conversation with a legend in lighting on today's Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
That's right, Ellen. Hey, welcome everyone to episode 461. And today, as part of our Legends of Light series, we have the illuminous Bob Dickinson here with us. Hey, Bob, shall we genuflect now? Everyone, please genuflect. Okay. I'm Jewish and I'm genuflecting. I don't know how that works. I don't know. So, Bob, we've wanted to have you on the show now for 9 years. And you've been such a busy guy and you haven't been able to, make the time. But today you can. And it's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
So before we get started, Dennis, please tell our audience a little bit about Bob. This should be very, very short because he really hasn't done that much in the industry. So go ahead, Dennis.
I can't imagine anyone not knowing who Dr. Robert Andrew Dickinson is. But for those listeners that have been living on the planet Jupiter, here's a brief recap about the celebrated television lighting designer originally born in Ashford, Kent, England. Bob's career spans over 50 years. He's been focused on award shows, music shows, game shows, talk shows, special events. They make up several thousand on-screen television credits. Dickinson's break into the industry came when joining Yacht, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stagehands, and he started working as a juicer in L.A. in the film and television industry. He quickly moved from working as a lamp operator, which is what a juicer is, into lighting direction for television, working under industry leader Carl Gibson of Academy Lighting. He eventually worked in the celebrated lighting designers Bill Plagis and Amaro Ferrantino at IFA Associates. His breakthrough show, Solid Gold, garnered him his first Emmy win at the age of 29, and it was a catalyst that led to a brilliant career in television lighting. In 1990, Bob founded Full Flood Incorporated, a consortium of lighting designers and directors of photography for the multi-camera television industry. Bob's been involved with many, many high-profile shows, including the Academy Awards, the Grammy Awards, the Tony Awards, multiple Super Bowl halftime shows, multiple Olympic ceremonies, and the 2010 Shanghai Expo, among others. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I want to get into this because I am just in awe of Bob. I'd like to get a couple of quick housekeeping questions out of the way first, though, Bob, if you don't mind. You've been credited as Robert Dickinson, sometimes with the A, Bob Dickinson, and even Bobby Dickinson. What makes you comfortable, and what should we be calling you today?
I prefer Bob, but the reason why there's so many is poor housekeeping on my part. I never check the credits before we do the show or after. So they just call me what they called me on the show, basically. But yeah, Bob.
Okay.
So, Bob, I have a quick question. Is it true that you have an Emmy room? I mean, you have like a vault of Emmys?
No, they're right behind me, right here.
That's I thought those were gilded doors. But we have, okay, for our listeners who can't see it, there's like solid gold behind them. And I just thought it was like a wall of gold. But it is. It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, our Light Talk Crack research team tells me that you've been nominated for the Emmy Award in lighting design 70 times.
Oh, my God.
Now, that would mean that you've gotten a nomination every year since you were out of diapers. Is that a correct number? Is that true? How is that possible? More importantly, Bob, how do you maintain a sense of modesty that you have?
I wish I was more modest. How's that? But yes, I've just been fortunate enough to have the kind of career that offered me the opportunities to do those high quality shows that indulge in good lighting. And so
before we get into some serious questions, there's something that I have to finalize here. My Lumen brother, David Jacques there, he thinks that all successful lighting designers own a yacht. He's always busting my chops about not owning a yacht myself. Do you happen to have a yacht?
Well, if you call a 21-foot flat bottom, actually it's a tri-tune on Lake Arrowhead, a yacht. It's nice to go have a Saturday afternoon brunch, and that's the extent of it.
I see. Is there a bar on this yacht? Is there like any? Do you actually partake of any type of liquids on this yacht?
It's called a cooler, and you carry them out by hand. And,
Well, you angling for an invitation, David?
Well, I'm ready, Bob. We can go out on the yacht with the cooler. I'll even bring my special concoction of buffalo milk. You know what buffalo milk is, right? If you've been to Catalina Island, you know that buffalo milk is a special drink.
Oh, yes.
That my dear wife and I love.
Steve, take it away.
Well, I have been haunting you on the internet now for about a week, reading all I can read. Can you tell our listeners how you got started? I mean, I understand it was fairly young, like in high school, middle school, maybe? Drama club?
It was in high school, and for whatever reason, I was drawn to drama, and I soon realized I just couldn't act. I really sucked.
Join the
club. But the process then introduced me to lighting, and we had a fairly aggressive drama at Long Beach Poly High, not far away from where David is now, and we had a fairly aggressive drama program, and so the lighting actually was taught. And once I was exposed to it, I realized how well suited I was, and I was attracted to it, and so that's what made me start pursuing it.
What was it, though, that clicked in your mind? What was the emotional reaction that really drove you in that direction?
Well, I think I had an understanding of it. And, this I've always said when I'm speaking to students at university level, that if you kind of have a belief of the way something should look, that is an instinct almost, and that you need to follow up on. Go with your instinct first. And so I just was attracted to the fluidity and the almost chaotic manner in which the lighting creative process occurs. And so, yeah, I just really enjoyed it.
And then how did you get from the school part to the first professional job?
I was able to get a job at a place because I decided I needed to not go to college initially. I needed to take 2 years off for other reasons. So I was able to secure a job at a place that rented lighting equipment at the mighty salary in 1971 of $2 an hour. And I proceeded to clean 4/0 cable. But it did not take me very long to sort of understand how to weasel my way into the industry. And through a very famous gaffer at the time who worked with us, he was able to get me into the union. His name was Doug Pentek, and really a phenomenal gaffer, big-time gaffer at the time. And so I went to Universal, Warner Brothers, MGM, and just moved lights around depending on what the DP and the gaffer wanted. But I soon realized that, first of all, the amount of time it took to film anything and the creative process was so slow, shot by shot, basically. I was not enthusiastic about it, just how my days were. And then a lighting director, Carl Gibson, came to Universal and to shoot a terrible, variety music special called Lights, Camera, Monty, which is Monty Hall singing on New York Street. And boom, it just was like, I love this. We're moving quickly. Decisions are being made at a really kinetic rate, and I loved it. So I went to Carl, and he said, well, I'll give you a chance. Come to work for our company. And that's how I started working in television.
What were the kind of shows you were doing at Universal? Were they live shows or features?
They were features. I did, all of them forgettable, like the Towering Inferno.
I remember that. That was unforgettable. Quinn Martin production, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, it was. Yes, it was.
There you go.
And but then I also worked on a lot of series like Columbo and Banachek and all. At the time it was a factory at Universal.
Sure. Well, they were doing those alternate things. I remember I loved Banachek with George Peppard.
Yeah.
But they were alternating all those. They were fun shows.
Yeah. I think Banachek was once a month and Columbo was once a month. And so they had a whole series that they weren't every week. But yeah, and I learned a lot, moving around big, heavy 10Ks is no fun. But seeing what they did really was stimulating. It's like, wow. And especially some of the DPs that I got to work with, seeing them aggressively use light instead of just being illumination engineers, really using light to interpret the content of the moment was really thrilling. And I started to understand that it's more than just a formula of how to get light in here and where it is always gone, as opposed to what is this moment about? And that has survived all these years later. I'm in a moment in a song or in a production of any kind. What are we trying to achieve here emotionally? And, what should this look like? What is the content saying this should look like? And that has lasted all these years.
It's pretty simple when you think about it. It's funny because, we always think, a lot of people think that lighting is this huge technical art form, which it is, but it really comes down to the emotion and how you want to make people feel.
Well, I think for me, a great example of your work in doing exactly what you're saying is when you lighted Kanye West, I think, who didn't want any light on the stage. and that your solution to that, I have to say I'm a fanboy. Your solution was
there, but I'd like to correct something. It's not about me wanting to superimpose the way I want it to be. It's really what is the content driving at it? Where does the content need to go? And so, yes, you can make really pretty pictures all day long. You can almost use AI to just tell you what a pretty picture should be. But are you doing any favor to the content? Whatever it is, a theatrical moment, a moment in a song or a dramatic moment, it's like, what is really the content asking? I really encourage people to go first with their instinct and listen to the content and then, go, what should this look like? What do you feel? And it's really actually been the key, I think, to my success in many ways, has been listening.
I think I should point out that I owe you a debt of gratitude for getting into this business to begin with indirectly. One of my favorite shows when I was in college, because I was a musician and a keyboard player, was Don Kirshner's rock concert, which used to be on ABC. And I lived to watch that show. And I remember once that Billy Joel was performed several times probably, but I watched this thing on television, and there was no MTV. There was no real opportunity to see musicians. That was it. And I just realized that I was never going to be Billy Joel, but I was enthralled by watching the process and the way the audience was reacting to the lighting of that particular show. And it was very innovative, I think, a great deal because of you. You did that show, right?
Yes. And, that show actually was real critical for my philosophy and my success in a way, in that I had gone to see Fleetwood Mac in Las Vegas. And I'd been doing Kirshner's rock concert for a while. But I saw them in concert, and they had two backlight follow spots, and that were following, Stevie around and Lindsay, but they only had two, and but everyone was smoking dope. And so there was so much haze in the air.
Oh, David must have been there.
I was there.
Well, everyone was smoking dope at the time. It was like cocaine
That's
to
right,
the
that's
80s,
right.
dope was to the 70s. But so these two pencils of light were so dynamic. And I realized, that's where the moment is where those lights are pointing me to. And I thought, this has got to be a way for me to sort of do that in our shows. And so I went to Lou Horvitz, who was directing the show at the time. And I said, Lou, I really want to put in backlight follow spots. And he said, well, we got to have smoke then. And I said, yeah. And so he talked the producers into it, and boom, it was like the whole dynamic of that show, the whole look of that show was instantly, better. And later on, when Lou talked me into doing Solid Gold, the first thing I said is, we've got to have at least two backlight follow spots. And so Lou was like, well, let's go to the producers. And Brad Lockman was the producer. And so they, we don't know about the expense, blah, blah, blah. But they went for it, and it started to define that show. These backlight follow spots with a little bit of smoke in the air. And that it is such a powerful tool. You're instructing the audience in a way where to look, and it's so dynamic as well.
But when you did Solid Gold, didn't you actually, wasn't that the first time broadcast used moving lights? Weren't you the man who brought the moving light into broadcast?
I got the show, and they hired me for a month, and then they were supposed to go over to a local or a LD at the studio. And after the first month, they said, well, maybe you should stay another month. And soon that turned into just staying on the show. And, but it was not dynamic enough. I couldn't understand or reflect the content and the music. And I was doing a show in Detroit, and I went out to see the Steve Miller Band in concert. And, you must remember at this time, this new product, Verilight, was just the talk of the lighting industry. But you couldn't rent them for any television. It was this philosophy of Verilight. And they were, and so I went to see this Steve Miller Band concert, and suddenly in the concert, I see all these what look like Verilights, but they're not Verilights. There's a knockoff of Verilights, and this company Morpheus had these Panaspots. And so it happened to be that was all the Panaspots in the world at that time. And so I went to the guy running the board, and it turned out to be John Richardson, who owned Morpheus. And I said, these are really cool. And I do this show, Solid Gold. Would you mind if I tested out a dozen of them on the show? And he said, yeah, let's do it. So I talked the producers into paying to put them up in the air. And that week we were going to do Dolly Parton's, first television appearance of potential new boyfriend. And she walks down on stage, and there's a dozen upstage. And she walks down stage, and we go into the chorus, and these 12 lights come on. Well, actually, I had them on idling to begin with. And then these, at the chorus, don't talk about my bed. The lights just do an X pattern cross. It was as though it was like the second coming. I mean, the producers, everyone went absolutely nuts. And within a few weeks, this spread that Solid Gold had this lighting that was so dynamic and interesting, and that producers and lighting directors and all, many people from the entertainment industry were coming to see the show tapings, and they weren't coming to see Lou Horvitz. They're coming to look at a dozen lights wag about, but it was so revolutionary on television. And I believe that was the first use of moving lights on broadcast television. They had been recorded on, Genesis tour stuff, but never on broadcast television. And it really defined that show for many years to come.
Weren't they too noisy at the time? Because I know the Verilights are ridiculous. The VL2 and the VL2Cs, because I was one of the first ones to use them in opera. And and Jim Waits had to construct these giant sound baffles to put around them because the fans and the motors were so noisy. Did you have that issue with using them in broadcast?
Well, unfortunately, I worked in an industry that did not have that kind of delicacy, audio-wise.
Okay.
And so,
well, it's not opera, I'm sure, but
yeah, so you went from an intro from Marilyn McCoo to a performance that was to track.
There you go.
And so it was.
It's to track. So they turned the sound off. Okay, I got it. Right. That makes sense.
They were lip syncing most of it. Sometimes they did live vocal.
But I'm such a sucker. I can't tell you. I always think everything's live. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I mean, in today's world, they'd be laughed off of the screen, but it was cool. And you know what? It was before MTV. And so if you wanted to see or, hear pop music of the week, and they were very responsive, they really were close to when songs dropped to have the performer on there. And so a lot of acts came through there, and it was very, very popular, even though it was syndicated.
Oh, I watched it. I watched it all the time. And to Dennis's point about Don Kirshner's rock concert, I watched that every week too. Yeah,
it was. And Don Kirshner's rock concert was more like Top of the Pops than it was, bandstand, and the fare that was being offered at the time, which was very, very homogenized. And at least Don Kirshner's rock concert felt a little bit like they were live performances. And
they had Genesis on live at one time. I remember that was a big deal with Peter Gabriel. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
No, we really, and we could be as creative as we wanted in 22 minutes. Because that's what the time we had to set up.
That's one song for Genesis.
Bob, you did so many. You did so many shows like this early on in your career. Did you have a music background? Did you play an instrument or anything?
No. And I just never did it, so I don't know. But I had an emotional understanding of what music was about. And so, that led me toward, it really, especially with music, I felt well adapted to it. But, The thing about Don Kirshner's rock concert and those that made them different was the fact that it felt live, it felt real and tangible. It did not feel synthetic. And but schedule was a big thing. Getting back to that schedule was a big thing. And when I took Solid Gold up, it was the same thing, that we could do. Those producers basically, after I introduced the moving lights, said, you can do anything you want, but you have to do it in half an hour, and so the creative process became really instinctive, that's how cues were developed. And I think that today that is not necessarily talent, but it's a learned tool that any young designer needs, is how do you do this, really quickly if necessary.
So did the move to working with Bill Klages and Emmy take you into the awards world?
No, what really took me into the awards world was a director named Marty Pasetta. At the time, Marty was doing most of the really high-end, award shows and the like. And Marty was an asshole. I mean, he was impossible to work with.
He had a reputation, that's for sure.
None of the Emmy and Bill Klages and Red McKinnon and all the high-end lighting designers at the time could not work with Marty Pasetta. He was just impossible. He's a director that would yell at his cameraman, "Start wide and go wider." It was like just
put another lens in front.
Yeah. And so, and he just screamed. But I was a young designer and I wanted jobs. And so I worked with Marty on a few things, and he said, okay, I like this kid. He doesn't yell back at me. And so I put up with all this abuse, but I was getting these unusual opportunities, and I didn't know anything about how to assemble larger shows or anything else. But then in 1983, God, the decades stack up, don't they? In 1983, Roy Christopher was asked to do the Oscars again, and he said, no, I'm not going to do it because your lighting designers don't know what to do with my scenery, so I'm not going to do it.
For those in the audience who don't know, you should tell us who Roy Christopher, the production designer, is.
Roy Christopher was, Ray Claus and Roy Christopher were the major production designers at the time. And Roy was, in particular, an incredible artist. I mean, he never repeated the same old tricks. He always was looking to interpret the moment, so to speak. And but Marty, when they went to him and said, ABC went to him and said, this asshole Roy won't come back to the show unless you get a lighting director. And so that's what we were called back then. And Marty says, I want Dickinson to do it. Well, I was 29 years old, and I had never done a live show at all. All the shows I'd done had been done on tape. And so, and the beauty of tape is cut, let's do it again. And suddenly they're asking me to do the biggest live show at the time. It used to have audiences of like 50 million, it's just mammoth. And so they said, okay, do you want to do it? And Marty called me and said, Dickinson, you're going to do the Oscars and you better not fuck it up. Okay. And so I agreed to do it. And, I didn't know any better, that I needed to actually know how to call a live show. And so back then you had a 1 week in the hall. That's all you had. You loaded in midnight on Monday morning, and the show was the following Monday. So it was 8 days in the hall. And so we get through it, We get through it, and I designed this plot that instead of using 2,000 instruments the way that the Mark Palius, who is a good guy and a good lighting director, but he used 2,000 pars to light the show the year before. So I thought, I'm going to use these solid gold, success on this show. I'm going to, instead of hanging all these fixed instruments, I'm going to use moving lights. So I called John, and John, I said, I want to hang 140 moving lights or whatever it was. And he said, well, that's almost our entire corporate inventory. But he said, yeah, I'll make it happen. So we put up these moving lights, and sure enough, there were design-specific lights there that I could, sculpt a piece of scenery using instruments that were not just wash units. And it was really, despite the schedule, it really was looking good. And I watched it back a few years ago, and I thought, oh God, why did I do that? But overall, at least it was specific. And that's when I had that horrible event happen, though, on the broadcast day. We're in the middle of dress rehearsals, and all 140 or whatever they were lights suddenly just look stage left. They just zeroed out, and they stopped moving. And we're going through the show, and even Marty's saying, this doesn't look right. Don't we're working on it. We're
no shit.
And but everyone sees the Oscars. Everything's frantic anyway. But this doesn't look like it's going to be okay. It's going to be. And after the show, after the dress rehearsal, which ends at like 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the day. That's how the show used to rehearse. I go out front of house to see John Richardson, who is controlling it, on a Kliegel Performer 2. This is actually a theatrical. That's what he used to control the moving lights with. 0 to 10 did different features on the. But anyway, I go out there, and there is John Richardson and his techs, and they got the Performer 2 open, and they have soldering irons. And I thought, this is the end of my career. This is it. And I said,
you mean they didn't have a spare? They didn't have another Performer too there?
I was
just plug in.
Yeah, what is going on here?
Oh my God. No.
What does a 29-year-old on his first job like that know about having a spare?
I'm not talking about Bob. I'm talking about John. He knows the equipment. You bring spare boards, man. This is the Oscars.
This is a learning experience for everybody.
Apparently so.
I'll say.
And so the first time they're going to be used on a live broadcast on network television, the biggest show ever, and there's a soldering iron 6 hours before curtain. And so
that's not a good sign.
And I'm like, this is it. I'm going back to cleaning 4 out at Cinemobile. This is the end of my career. And but they discovered that that the snake was bad, and they had run a second snake during the installation, but when they pulled up the original snake, somehow, suspiciously, someone had severed it completely. And
I bet it was somebody from Verilight. I bet somebody from Verilight was there.
Yeah. There was a lot of disgruntled stagehands at the time because they were threatened by them. It was a whole... Moving lights created a lot of drama with labor.
That's true.
They eventually embraced it, but at first it seemed like you were going to replace, But however it happened, it had become severed in the middle of dress rehearsal. So they plugged the other snake in, and everything went back. So
Magic.
I don't know if it's magic. It's just sheer luck at that point. But yes,
you must have aged like 20 years in that afternoon. I mean, that is just unbelievable.
Yeah,
a lot of a lot of the students that I work with and younger people these days, they don't quite understand the temperamental diva directors and producers that existed in television back in the 70s and 80s. Do you have any great Marty Pacetta stories you can tell to kind of describe that?
No, not that come to mind right away. There's probably more than I ever would like to recollect, but there were a lot of divas back then, and the current tone of things, I don't think that there's that tolerance any longer for that kind of behavior. There's too many options now. Yeah.
But the crazy thing that I find interesting is, so it's 1983, we're talking 45 years. Marty did the Oscars for whatever, maybe 20 years or so. There's been at least 4 or 5 different directors. Who does it now? Glenn Weiss, I think, is directing.
Yeah, no.
Over all the years.
Yeah.
Oh, Hamish is doing it?
Yeah,
so
Hamish.
over
Glenn
all
does
the
the
years,
Tonys.
there's been several directors, but one lighting designer.
Yeah.
Several art directors, but one lighting designer. That's a big kudos to you for lasting through them all.
Yeah, I actually was replaced for 2 years due to a director who will go rename nameless, but they brought me back in short order. And yeah, I've done 40. How many have I done? Yeah, 40 Oscars.
42, I believe.
Ah, there you go.
Wow.
He's counting.
Wow.
And by
There
the
you
way, I
go.
got to make a clarification. You make it sound like the divas are only in broadcast, but they're not. They're in theater. They're in opera. They're in dance. They're still there, okay? Now, I'm blessed that I work with nice people now, but let me tell you, I went through my share of divas too. So it really, it's not something that's akin to just broadcast lighting. They're divas all over the place, so that's a whole
But
other story.
what it brings up though is one of the keys to success for anyone in any department, in probably in any industry, but is your ability to manage divas. Or it's like if you're difficult for others to deal with, I don't care how talented you are, your career is not going to go anywhere. It's like that being able to actually to actually take anything and not allow it to turn into an emotional moment where you become known as difficult to deal with.
That is great advice, Bob. We see it everywhere, and the great designers and great, production team members are people who can just let it roll off their back. I'm not saying that you shouldn't stand up to abuse or anything like that, but we're talking about people. You got to understand who's really in charge, and the director is in charge. The director, that's the person, and it comes down to a point where sometimes you have to swallow your pride and say, okay, how can I make his or her idea as good as possible? And embrace it.
It's good to clarify in those moments. It's good to clarify. Okay, I'll do what you're saying, but I just want you to know I think it's wrong. Now, I want you to evaluate, and when we look at this the way you would like to do it, and really know if you feel as passionate, knowing that I really think it's wrong. And to give them that opportunity then, usually it does change the course of things.
Speaking of directors, Dennis mentioned Glenn Weiss, who does direct the Tonys. And if my numbers are correct, I think you've done 32 of those, starting another decade later, 93. Talk about that show a little bit. I thought this year's was quite lovely. And I loved that Hamilton mashup, which has some very special lighting in it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, the Tonys, and this gets back to a lot of other kinds of adaptions that we do. The Tonys is an original television production. So that part of me, the designer, is designing the show for the overall theme scenery and for the awards portions and those original dance numbers and the like. But when we do the actual individual show numbers, we're talking about now a more like a concert adaptation. Not quite, because we don't have the concert rig up, but we're trying to get the themes and the creative that's already gone on. So it's not my job now to recreate the themes, the visual themes that are going on. It's now, how do I adapt those themes to a rig that is meant for, an entire television broadcast. But when they come in, and they only get an hour and a half per number to rehearse from soup to nuts, from marking the dancers on the stage to that's lunch. There's an hour and a half, including all my lighting, programming. And the advantage to it, though, is we're not rehearsing those acts from scratch on television either. They come in, they mark it, and they do what they do every night. And so at least the talent is ready to go. And I will, I see all the shows, and I try to, with my team, design an approach that is going to carry on the themes. It's never going to replicate them perfectly, but carry on the themes of their production. Now, we have, though, in times with the encouragement of creative directors, been asked just to reinterpret it completely, in which case we can, go ahead and come up with a new visual approach. But like with Hamilton, it was just very arduous. It need to come up with those complex cues in a very short period of time, and have to focus all of our lights on a real set. So many of them they just have virtual sets anymore with a big LED screen upstage. But that had a real set, and it takes just a lot of preparation, a lot of focus, and having a good team, which is essential for anything. Since Solid Gold, I learned that instead of being specific about lamp 148 needs to be focused at 45 degree, instead of those kinds of nuts and bolts programming that used to be common in the 1970s and 80s in television. I want channel 145 at 15% and channels 146, so on. And Bill Collages used to write out those cues in advance. It's just so amazing. But I've always worked in a more narrative form, where you suggest, or you tell, I would like to get a blue backlight wash in a very light blue over the overall stage, but I want to have 2 upstage hard edge units on this person and 2 on this person. And then the programmer does that. I no longer am, talking specifics. I'm talking more in a narrative manner as to how I would like to achieve it. And that's why I have always called my programmers, my moving light programmers, lighting designers as well, or lighting directors, I should say. So they're adding creativity to it. They're not just following commands. And so especially on that show, it's really important to understand the visual themes of the original product and then reinterpret it.
So, Bob, thank you very much for being with us on today's episode of Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and Sister. And you are truly a legend of light, and we are honored to have you here. And I do have some good news. Because you have so many great things to say, we're going to split this episode into 2 parts. So this will be the end of part 1, and everybody tune in next week when you get to hear more, part 2 of Bob Dickinson, Legend of Light. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk Insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, you will have to deal with me, Snoot from the Snoot Group. And don't get it twisted. Just because I married one of these losers does not mean I will go easy on you. So don't with me.
This has been a very special Light Talk, coming to you from multiple locations in California: Palm Springs, the Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, Santa Clara, plus the tropical paradise of St. Bart's, and last but not least, the Lone Star State.
So be sure to join us next week when we dive into more lighting shenanigans and serve up a fresh, piping hot casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
Thanks again to our friend Bob Dickinson, and we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Thank you, Bob.
See ya.